How's it going? And welcome to episode 176 of On the Wire. Proud member, of the Pitcher List Podcast Network. Follow the pod on the Twitter at On the Wire Pod. I am Adam Howe. You can follow me at 80 grade. That's all spelled out. Kevin Hastings next to me can be found at Hastings Kevin. We've got a great show lined for you. And if you're watching on the tubes, you notice we've got a nice fresh look. Thank you very much, Josh Sperry. We're official. It only took us 176 episodes, Kevin, but we look actually official now with not only with the video but with the overlay. It really looks like we know what we're doing here. Thanks to Josh. How you doing? What do you think?
What
What do you
you're
think of the
doing. I just show up.
That's all we need to do, right? That's half the battle.
Availability is the best ability. Yes.
Happy to be back with you, man. Missed last week. You and Todd killed it. You went through every single team. I am disappointed. I do love that episode every single year. It is typically one of our longest ones. And I will say, I know Todd made comments about it, but it would have been a whole lot longer if I was on the show. So maybe it was a good thing that I skipped it out and Todd could take the reins.
Yeah. It was great. We did miss you. Hope you enjoyed the concert with your wife. The amazing thing about it, and I did mention it on the show, but kudos to Todd.
Oh, geez.
He went through every team, every move they had made prior to the deadline and added those to the outline. I followed in behind him and then went over the lineups that we'd seen for the 3 or 4 days, and then added that. It worked out perfectly, but Todd put a ton of time into the prep for that show. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's par for the course. Todd's been on the show plenty of times. He's always extremely thorough on that outline. People comment to me about, me being thorough, and he's nothing compared to Todd. And we've had a couple of guests over the years that have really shown in that, but Todd really takes the cake. So Todd, thank you extra. And, feel free to, DM me separately and give me whatever heckles you need to. But I really appreciate what you did for us and for me. So shout out to Tom. Make sure you're reading his Faab article every week over at FTN. It's one of the very few things there that's not behind a paywall, and it's been like that ever since he joined that. So kudos to him for that, and it's a great resource. Even though you're listening to us before Faab, it's great to kind of get a recap of what has been going on, so you can either learn lessons of others so you don't make the same mistakes, and also see the trends that are happening across one of the most competitive landscapes,
like the Matt Festa
baseball.
mistakes.
Oh, those are hard to miss because people, that's the great thing about those kind of mistakes. Usually they happen in like week 1 or week 2.
Yeah.
People are just too quick. They're like, I gotta get that. But it's like, especially analysts that are also like in the spotlight on Twitter or in Discords or some social network. They're really quick to own up to that and just wear
absolutely.
it.
There's nothing else you can do.
No, absolutely.
There's nothing else you can do.
Because some jerk in your league is, if you don't do it, they're gonna call you out on it. So you might as well wear it.
Exactly.
Own the story, right? That's what you're supposed to do. Create your own news.
Before we get going, I want to say one more thing. The other night, when Bubba and the Bloom was recording live, and I tried to catch that and be in the chat like people do with us as well. But I mentioned that my in-laws have been in town for 3.5 weeks, got another week and a half to go, new job for a couple of weeks, and I was having so much fun listening to their show and being involved in the chat. And now same for this week. Like, this is absolutely amazing. There's nothing I'd rather be doing right now. Got my Maui Big Swell IPA, and I'm ready to go.
Nice. Shout out Maui Brewing. I haven't been, but they are a location of the company I work for on this, on the side of my job.
You've mentioned that before. I actually was at their Honolulu Waikiki location a couple of weeks ago in person. First time I'd been to one of their actual locations.
Right. You did that other sport draft, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yep, Scott Fishbowl actually,
yes. Shout out for
which is really great, fantasycares.org, all the just like Justin does with our, the Potapalooza and fantasy baseball,
TGFBI for that
and in
matter. Yeah,
fact,
yeah.
that was the charity of Potapalooza this year, so raising a lot of money for people that need it.
Yeah, and it's a great time, and they're all live. This year, they were all live drafts, if I'm not mistaken,
No,
right?
there's no, there's like 4,000
Oh,
teams, I
well,
think, but there were several live
several.
drafts around the
Okay.
country. Yeah,
Including, the Big Island, so
Honolulu.
there you go.
Yeah.
All right, that's awesome. All right, let's without any further ado, we don't have a ton of news, so let's get into it and kind of fly through it. And I don't think we're gonna hit the record from last episode, but maybe we can stretch it out to get a little closer. That's what that 5 minutes of banter was about, just trying to get as close to that hour 40 mark, or hour 50 mark that we can. We'll start in Minnesota though, Kevin. Bunch of injuries just went through recently, earlier today, actually, officially today. Brock Stewart, he's on the IL with bicep tendonitis. Brooks Lee ends his season by having arthroscopic shoulder surgery. He should be out for at least or the ramp up is about 5 or 6 months from everything I've seen. So should be ready for spring training, but safely assume you can safely know that he won't be playing the rest of 2024. And then Joe Ryan left the start early and he knew it. You could see it on his face. He basically said, "Take me out, coach. I'm done." But he is out on the IL with a teres major strain, and all likelihood very well could be out for the rest of the year. Nothing official on that, but it is a long road back. I believe it was a grade 3 strain, if I remember correctly. So, I mean, feel free to talk about any of these guys, but I think obviously the centerpiece here is Joe Ryan in the Minnesota rotation. Louis Varland was up for the doubleheader as the 27th man. Can it be safely assumed that Varland will stay and fill that hole in the rotation, or is there anybody else that you're considering, or the Twins are considering to kind of mix and match with?
No, I think it's gonna be Varland. I really do. Um, and the good thing for Minnesota is that after those first couple of appearances for David Festa, he's really turned it around, and he looks like the guy we'd been seeing put up great numbers in the minor leagues.
Yeah,
That makes this a little easier for them. They feel like they need one guy, not multiple,
sure.
for the time being. So, and I do think that'll be Varland.
Yeah, it makes sense. They don't have a ton of other options, though. I'm sure even with just with their ages and with their workloads, I wouldn't be surprised to see Festa either get skipped maybe once or twice between now and the end of the year. Varland, almost same thing, and just see them get somebody else come in for spot starts or here or there, what have you. But I
Yeah,
feel very comfortable with Festa being in the rotation from here on out. Whether or not he gets a start skipped here or there is, I think, a given.
yeah, and Roster Resource has Kyle Bushley going on Wednesday this week for them. He does have 1 2 inning appearance for the Twins this season. Uh, I don't see a lot here I'm interested in. One, he's probably not going to go 5, even though he was starting in the minors, 19 starts, 100 innings. So that's over 5 innings per start. Pretty good for a AAA numbers. They don't typically let those guys go really deep into games, but there's just not much there that I'm interested in. So because of they do have a doubleheader on Friday, so they will, without a day off Monday.
Right.
That would be the hope when you have a doubleheader on Friday that you're off on Monday. They're not. They will need another guy. It's probably a semi opener type thing, although he is stretched out in the minors, so he could go 4 or 5, but I wouldn't count on it.
Sure. I mean, I did hear some rumors, or I read some speculation that Zebby Matthews might be an option to come up. He's not on the 40 man though, so obviously that would require another move. But I mean, they could easily
And
they could easily put Brooks Lee on the 60-day DIL to open up a roster spot if that were the case.
right, and if this is long term for Joe Ryan, like we fear, and they think they're going to need one of these guys for their postseason run, then that making room on the 40-man for somebody if they think they're the better pitcher is quite possible at this point in their situation.
And they haven't changed that rule. You still have to be on the major league roster before September 1st to be
Yep.
eligible, and obviously on the 40-man
Yep.
you do that. So there's that as well. Is that still true? Because we've seen some rookies debut in the playoffs. I feel like recently, or am I making that up? I very well could be making that up, apparently. But I feel like there's been some,
Alberto Mondesi debuted in the World Series.
yeah. So obviously there's probably some stipulations regarding injuries or something like that. I'd obviously have to pull up the
Right.
rule book to find out, but general rule: make sure you're on the roster by end of day, at the end of August. All right, so yeah, I mean, Brooks Lee, obviously, is there an impact that you see there with Brooks Lee not being eligible for the Twins lineup for the remainder of the season?
The thing I've noticed, we've talked about this quite a bit this season. Nobody's playing the matchups more than Minnesota right now. What we think of Tampa and what they were for a while,
Sure.
they've kind of backed off a little bit, but that's Minnesota now. And in spite of that, Manny Margot has started versus two of the last three righties that Minnesota has faced. So far, Manuel Margot, it looks to be the beneficiary of a little more playing time here as they still play the matchups. There is two guys. It's the same. No, it's different than last week. Carlos Santana had a day off this week, but Max Kepler played every day, and then Willie Castro, the shortstop, the only guys that play every day for Minnesota. Right now, the beneficiary of a little extra playing time appears to be Manuel Margot.
Yeah, good for him. Good for him. All right, let's. Speaking of names that we probably haven't considered rostering in a while, Pittsburgh and the Angels both bring back, I guess, or bring up some pitchers that maybe we haven't considered rostering, including the Pirates calling up Domingo Germán, who was going to have an opt out available to him if he wasn't called up on this day. So he was called up to the majors for the Pirates. And then Johnny Cueto signed a major league deal with the Angels. If I'm not mistaken, he left the Rangers minor league deal he had with them because they weren't calling him up. And the Angels, of course, had an opening for somebody like Cueto. Is there absolutely any chance? All right. I mean, I'm referencing Cueto mostly because Nick Pollock talked about him on the Plus Pitch podcast this morning,
Yes.
and just referencing the fact that what else does this guy have to lose? He could leave it all out there for one or two, maybe three starts. And is that tempting enough to actually want to bring him in for his next start next week? And then Germán, is there any longevity there for the Pirates?
I I don't think so. But I love Johnny Cueto. The Royals didn't win the World Series in 2015 without Johnny Cueto.
Cueto, there you go.
They don't get to the World Series without Johnny Cueto. He pitched a gem in the ALCS. Love him. And over the years, he's even the last couple of years in a couple of spots, he's still produced for us and our fantasy teams. He's been okay. It's really a matchup play. Uh, yeah, I mentioned being in the chat for Bubba and the Bloom the other night, and last night as well, their Thursday night show, and they go through every two-start pitcher for the week. And I made the comment that this time of year, depending on my ratios, I'll use every single one of these guys in some leagues and absolutely none of them in other leagues. And that's what we're looking at with Johnny Cueto here as well. If a
Yeah,
nice
yeah.
matchup in a league where I don't care about my ratios, I'll roll anybody out there right now.
Even Domingo Germán.
Uh, yeah, I will.
I almost got you.
He's going to be at the bottom of the list, but I would.
There, that's enough analysis on that one for sure. Somebody else who's about to return, not from an option but from the IL, is Merrill Kelly, possibly looking to return on Sunday for the Arizona Diamondbacks, if not Sunday, early next week. are you excited if you've got Kelly anywhere stashed anywhere for as long as he's been down? Are you excited to put him right back into your fantasy rotations, or is this a still ill where you're gonna hopefully be able to wait a week to see? I mean, if he does come back on start on Sunday, obviously you won't have to wait because your lineups are set and you didn't put him in your lineup. But if he starts on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, are you skipping a week or are you throwing him right back in? And if you don't have him, if he's available, how much are you bidding on Kelly, assuming he actually is healthy enough to be productive?
It's tough because yeah, we get to see him. Hopefully, we get to see him Sunday, and that will be versus Philadelphia. So a tough test, and I wouldn't hold too much against him if that goes badly. At the same time, we at least want to see something out of him. And Arizona has not named a starter for Sunday. I just checked, so you're correct. We may not know for sure. At Tampa Bay is the start next weekend if he does go Sunday. So they've been kind of up and down. I'm not really scared of that Tampa lineup.
No, no.
I think I probably would roll him out there as long as the start on Sunday appeared he's going to get me my 5 innings next time out. Um, but in general, I don't have Merrill Kelly anywhere, and I didn't have him even prior to the injury. It's not that I dropped him, but Arizona's been putting up runs, so that they're backing their starters. It's something, yeah. Like I said, at this time of year, I will throw almost anybody out there in some leagues, but I wouldn't in others, and I think he fits that case as well.
Yeah, fair enough. I think the best case scenario for all of us is he does start on Sunday. Those who
Yeah,
do
we want to
roster
see him.
him already have him locked into the bench or their IL slots. Don't activate him. Let him see what he does. And then for us who are interested in bidding on him, hope he doesn't do that great against Philadelphia. It's one of those classic keep the price down. We don't have a lot of money. But I really want to bid on you, and I want to win. So you don't need to blow up, but don't do great. 3 runs
He
over 4 innings. I'm okay. That's fine. That's just enough of a high enough ratios to scare some people away and keep the bidding down a little bit lower.
Yeah, he's 100% rostered in main events, but
Right.
only 71% in the 12-team RotoWire Online Championship. So, yeah, he's probably 12-team viable for that
It
Tampa start as long as things don't go absolutely horrendous on Sunday.
What's funny is that I know he's been out for so long, I feel, that I almost expected that rostership to be switched because it's like you don't have as much flexibility, obviously, in the 15 teamers to hold on to guys who are going to be out for a long time. And then pitchers themselves, when they do come back, are you question how good they're going to be right out of the gate.
Oh, he was dropped in spots, but I think he's been picked up
Like
over the past couple
more
weeks
recent, yeah,
as the
knowing he's going to be called back.
fantasy players knew he was getting close. Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. All right, moving on then to my Boston Red Sox. They're going to be officially without Tyler O'Neill for a little bit longer. He's been battling an illness, but now he also has an infection in his calf. So that's just odd. But anyway, he hit the IL with that officially. Anything that you're noticing out of the Boston lineup besides, an offense that's actually producing in general, but with O'Neill not even being an option, he hasn't been for the last like 6 or 7 days anyway. But who's already getting the time? And who do you think could benefit from an elongated absence?
Yeah, they've kinda shuffled things, around a little bit. I was really worried about David Hamilton's playing time, after the trade deadline. They'd called up Nick Sogard, and the previous week, he got a couple of starts when I thought Hamilton would, versus right-handed starting pitching. This week, Hamilton has played versus every righty and sat versus every lefty, and I think that's what we can expect the rest of the way. Nick Sogard is playing almost every day, as the second baseman, and there's not a lot there. Decent batting average, not many home runs, not many stolen bases, but as good as Boston's offense is going, and they are one of, if not the best offense in baseball over the past month or so, having somebody in their lineup just to continue to, especially with a decent batting average, so you can continue to build on runs and RBI, it is valuable. So yeah, I think these guys, because of the way they can shuffle a little bit, their
Yeah.
playing time is more solidified. Ref Snyder gets a start every once in a while against a righty, but mostly just lefties. Romy Gonzalez the same. So I think Hamilton being solidified versus righties, Rafaela being the set guy in center field, and Sogard at second base. I think all these guys' playing time is a little more secure.
Yeah, as you mentioned, the whole ability to shuffle with Rafael going from shortstop to center field, moving Duran
Yeah.
over to left, that kind of fills the void that O'Neill left. But at the same time, obviously somebody has to fill in, so it's not an obvious fill in. Like, all right, your left fielder's gone, they're going to put another outfielder in there. That's obviously not what they've been doing. I agree. I think we're going to continue to see more of the same while he is officially on the IL. And probably not a whole lot to say about Tristan Casas coming back or not coming back. So I don't think that's going to put a wrinkle into this playing time situation at first base either. So I mean, more time for Hamilton, great. One of the very few teams that is actually doing some version of a platoon at shortstop, as we like to say. It's not a position that you typically see. But they will not so much do a platoon, but they will just let anybody play the position that has the inclination of being able to do it between Rafaela, Hamilton, and others throughout the course of the year. All right, so yeah, keep an eye on that situation, but for the most part, yeah, I like the fact that if you can get a piece of Fenway, you probably should do it at this point because the team is playing
Yeah,
well, at least
that
offensively. Yeah.
I saw a lot of Boston this week. They played a series against the Royals. So
Mhm.
and in the two wins, they won the series 2 out of 3 games. The Royals were very fortunate that the margin of victory wasn't much larger. That they were having like 16, 18 hits a game. Like they are hitting the ball very well right now as a team.
Well, keep it up, guys. All right. We'll stay in the AL East as the Baltimore Orioles will be without Grayson Rodriguez. So he hits the IL with his own terrace or lat discomfort. What are we doing with Rodriguez in this situation? Of course, we talked about 2 weeks ago. We're at a point in the season, and as we get further and further along, you start questioning how long does somebody have to be out for me to just consider dropping, no matter how good they actually are. Where are you at with Grayson Rodriguez with this injury placement?
Yeah, this is a situation where hopefully we get a little more information before Fab run Sunday evening, but we probably won't.
Sure.
Brandon Hyde's quote is that he is optimistic that this will be relatively that he'll be back relatively quickly. I think as far as the Orioles are concerned, relatively quickly means getting him into 1 or 2 games before the postseason. That's over a month away. So yeah,
It's
it's
two
tough.
starts coming
I
off
would
the
try
injury.
to hold him, but if you need the spot, get your I think I would only expect 1 or 2 starts out of him the rest of the way. Of course, I would hope to get 3 or 4 and then be back by the end of this month. But if you need the spot, it'd be tough. I'm trying to hold him though.
Sure. I mean, obviously, it's a core piece of that rotation, and they just want him
Mhm.
healthy for the playoffs. So that would make me assume that they're not going to push him back for the regular season unless something terribly, terribly terrible happens in the month of September. They
Wh-
somehow.
When there's 7 weeks left in the season, what does relatively quickly mean?
I know. Yeah, fair. But
That's what
that
we got to figure out.
But for our purposes, we don't care about the playoffs. We care about who's actually pitching in the regular
Right.
season. So with
Yeah.
his absence, obviously he needs to fill up after the deadline. and leading up to the deadline, the Orioles really kind of reloaded. They didn't really go out and get that ace. I'm not considering Zach Eflin the ace that maybe his production was last year. But between Trevor Rogers, Zach Eflin additions here, Grayson was still in that mix. Who is somebody? I mean, Dean Kramer seems to be in the rotation now. Albert Suarez is back in the rotation. Are these guys kind of solidified there, or do you think there's going to be more mixing and matching to give people more rest to make sure nobody else hits the IL between now and the playoffs?
No, I think we're gonna see Suarez until Grayson comes back. That's what I expect. He's already listed as the starter for Sunday, and I would expect that to continue for the foreseeable future, depending on how everything goes down with Grayson Rodriguez here.
Yeah, fair enough. Chase McDermott, who was sent down, also now on the IL himself, so not an option for
Mhm.
a while. And then Cade Povich, who
Oh,
also made his debut earlier in the season, not doing too well for himself, honestly, but
right. And
not going to be put.
he's probably the next
Yeah,
best
exactly.
option. So they're hoping Suarez can handle this for a while.
Fair. All right, and then, well, speaking of former Orioles, at Austin Hayes, he hits the IL for the Phillies with his own left hamstring strain. He's playing a lot more than I thought he would, at least out of the gate, moving into Philly. Pretty much playing every day in left field for the Phillies since the move over there. Um, is there is somebody going to just jump in and take all that playing time, a 1-for-1 swap in Philly, or is there an opportunity for an obvious platoon split or some kind of split in playing time so multiple people get a little bit of extra playing time?
I don't know yet. Weston Wilson, in very limited playing time at the major league level, has performed well, and he was having a nice season in the minors as well. Between the two, in just under 350 plate appearances, he got 20 home runs and 15 stolen bases this season. He was hitting 240 at AAA in a little over 300 plate appearances, 273 only 35 plate appearances. I expect that batting average to go down, but he's only been up for 2 games and recently and played 1 versus the I believe the righty, and then sitting against the lefty. Is that right? No. Played against the lefty, sitting today against the righty. So this is something to look at the rest of the weekend, because for Friday night they slid Brandon Marsh over, and Johan Rojas is in center. So this is something we got to monitor over the weekend. And I feel so bad for Hayes because he really was performing and getting more playing time. And Todd and I talked about him last week. He was the ad for the Phillies and had availability because he didn't have the playing time with Baltimore. And
Yeah,
it worked out. It was working out until the injury. Unfortunately,
until
I
it
feel
wasn't.
really bad for him.
Yeah, working out until it wasn't. Yeah, so it's these are the things that you just got to pay attention to, because as I'm kind of scrolling through as you're talking and trying to look up stuff on the fly, you go to the lineup tracker over at Roster Resource, and it's a little inaccurate because Jason over there didn't fill in the fact that he was gone or off the roster on that chart, but obviously it's on the transaction tracker. So just making sure that you're looking at things, you're double checking in different sources and making sure that you understand that. Because if you looked at this lineup tracker, which I look at a lot, and I'm sure you
Yes.
do too, it sure looks like Wilson has been up since mid-July and has only played about 6 games in that time frame. But obviously, he was also sent down in between that time as well, and as you said, just called back up a couple days
Right.
ago. So that timeline could obviously increase here as well. Cal
If he
Stevenson,
can
the
keep that
actual,
strikeout rate in the low 20s, I like Weston Wilson the rest of the way.
sure. They did call up Cal Stevenson as well as the corresponding move to putting in Austin Hayes. So there is another mouth to feed on the roster, at least a 1-for-1. Obviously, Weston Wilson, maybe a little bit of a higher on the pecking order. We'll see as the weekend unfolds. Last thing here, Kevin just came through today after his blow up yesterday. Camilo Doval was optioned, the closer for the Giants, one of the closers that did not move, that did not get replaced at the deadline, that some were speculating might have happened. He moves, but he just gets moved because they option him down to work on some things. Obviously, he's been struggling in the whip department, mainly the walks department, throughout the course of the season. But that leaves the door wide open for the closer position. And I do have to say, I'm in one of my leagues. I'm playing in my head-to-head leagues. I'm playing the guy who I'm playing has Doval, and I still have Tanner Scott in that league. And Tanner Scott, of course, got the win yesterday or on Thursday after going 0.1, a third of an inning technically, because he came in at the top of the eighth, got the out, then he came in in the ninth and walked 4 straight batters to score a run, and then allowed multiple other runs of his scored after they took him out. And so that looked awesome. I thought that the scorers would just take the win away from him because it's one of those scorers' discretions. Like, you don't deserve this win, even though you were in the game at the right time. But they let him have it. And then Doval's same exact thing happened. So it was a nice juxtaposition in our scoring for the week. But yeah, Doval
Yes.
got the win there, even though he blew up and blew to save one of those backdoor wins there. He won't be doing that for at least 15 days as he was sent down. Who's your favorite to take the role, or are you seeing this as pure? I mean, personally, I'm going to jump in first. I just hope they go Roger. I hope the Roger brothers just go back and forth every other opportunity. Just let the Roger brothers go in and just, it just be a fun story there. But who do you assume it's going to be?
That would be fun. I agree. But I think they're third and fourth in the order, even though they may get some saves. I think uh, I I would go with Ryan Walker the way he has pitched this season, but Jordan Hicks just went back to the bullpen as well.
Yeah,
So, and yep, Jason at Roster Resource has all 4 of them in the closer role right now. But I would guess it's either Walker or Hicks, and I would lean Walker. And he's the one that's going to have the most availability. He's been a popular guy over the past few weeks, as a setup guy that's great ratios of some strikeouts and a win here and there, a snag a save here and there. So he's already on some teams, but he does have availability. Jordan Hicks going back to the bullpen, starting to look better again. And I was surprised he did as well as he did for a starter at the beginning of the season. I
sure.
thought this would happen much earlier. So he's an option too, but I would rank him Walker, um, Hicks, and then Tyler and Trevor Rogers there.
Taylor Rogers. But yeah,
Oh yeah.
there's a lot of Rogers out there.
There's a lot of Rogers.
Yeah.
I got one of the 2 right.
There's a lot of Garcias and there's a lot of Rogers. One of them spells their name a little bit differently. But that's okay. The thing I want to point out, and this was throughout the PL Discord today. Shayna Rubin, who's a beat writer for the San Francisco Chronicle, she tweeted out there that she had known Bob Melvin had said he has wanted to keep Ryan Walker in his current role, whether that be the first man up or in a setup role. And so obviously there could be, it could open the door for Hicks to move into that role with his history, with his repertoire and what have you. But then she followed up the tweet like right after that. Of course, things could change with Walker's role now. And I'm like, that's not helpful, Shayna. You're not helping anybody. But yeah, I will echo everybody in the Discord saying that as well, because I was thinking the same thing. Yeah, I mean, the only thing, all right, so of course we always got to look at the money, right? The only one of those 4 who is arbitration eligible is Tyler, of the Rogers, Tyler Rogers. Both Hicks and Taylor are both making $11 million a year for the next couple years. Oh geez, Walker, actually, I think Walker is maybe also arbitration eligible as well. But between those 3 guys, that's something to be considered. And then of course Taylor is the lefty to consider, but he also has experience in the role as well. So it's kind of a crapshoot. Yep.
It is. We got too many of those right now.
Yep. So hopefully we get. Well, you know what's going to happen is we'll get some kind of indication over the weekend. Everybody will bid on them, and then they'll go with somebody else on Monday or Tuesday. So,
Exactly.
um, that was all the news I noticed, Kevin. Worth talking about here. So we're gonna get right into our recommendations, but before we do that, we're gonna take a quick break. All right, we are back, and we're gonna jump right into our Fab recommendations for the 20th run of Fab of the 2024 season. You believe it? We'll have done this 20 times, and we still got 7 more to go after this, or 6. So we stay diligent out there and make sure your waterfall bids are plentiful, as we typically will say. But Kevin, if I need some power, talking home runs, talking RBIs, who's the first guy I should be looking at?
I have a few here. Kind of nice. A couple of them are really only available in 12s, including our first guy here, Jorge Polanco. Uh, five five of his 11 home runs on the season have come since the break. He's hitting 241. He's also got 11 runs and 11 RBIs in that time. A stolen base as well. And my thought is he's finally healthy, right? So he is universally rostered in the main event, but only 57% on the 12-team RotoWire Online Championship. So available in about half the 12-team leagues out there. Another guy that it may seem kind of funny to put him in the power category, Eloy Jimenez has not hit a home run for Baltimore yet, but he is hitting on a daily basis. It appears that it's working out for Eloy the way we had hoped it might work out for Tim Anderson when he got out of that Chicago White Sox locker room. And he does have a lot of doubles in that time. So I do think there will be more power coming from Eloy. Of course, the caveat we always have with him is as long as he stays healthy, but he's the near everyday designated hitter there in Baltimore right now. Luke Raley, about the same rostership as Eloy Jimenez, available in about a quarter of 15 teamers and over half of 12 teamers. He's not going to be in our lineups this coming week. He sits versus lefties, and the Mariners are set up to face 4 of them this week. A couple of things. One, that makes him cheap as long as you have the room to let him sit there for a week. And 2, he may get dropped in spots this week for people that don't have that room for a guy that they know they're not going to be able to use either half of the week because they're playing 2 left-handed starting pitchers in the first half of the week and the second half of the week. So Luke Raley might be available out there even more than he is today, for those that have room to wait a week and get this week of facing all left-handed pitching out of the way. And then MJ Melendez, as bad as he was to start the season, has been really good for about 3 weeks now, since just before the All-Star break. He has 5 of his 13 home runs that he has on the season have come recently. He's got 2 or 3 multi-hit games. He's drawing walks. So as bad as MJ Melendez and that overall 195 batting average look, he has been much better recently.
Yeah, I'm cannot load this fast enough to find out exactly. So, I mean, if you're living under a rock, then you might not be aware of the new process plus stat that Kyle Bland put out through the
Love that.
PLV. Oh my God, right? And
It
this
is so
is
great.
now I need to look up Melendez's chart here. And then I could probably, whatever. Maybe next week I'll learn how to use this new background a little bit better. Where I can throw up charts and stuff like that for those watching on YouTube. But just look at, I mean, it's just a straight line up. And the fact that all these rolling charts are amazing, right? Shout out Scott Chu as well. For anytime I say the word rolling chart, I have to shout out Scott Chu. But the fact that the Process Plus incorporates decision making, contact ability, and power all in one, and then color codes what they're actually doing for like how they're contributing to the Process Plus, which ultimately, to really dumb it down, go look up the article that was written about it, obviously on Pitcher List. Kyle Bland also did a breakdown on Twitter as well, at Blandalytics on the Twitter. But it's basically a representation of future art. It predicts WRC plus better than WRC plus does, for
I like
future
the way
production.
Nick phrased it in a tweet. This is the hitter version of Stuff Plus, right?
There you go. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
So I mean, Melendez is, he had a good pitch, a good kind of peak in June as well. He was doing really well in June, at least according to Process Plus, and then obviously dipped down quite a bit, missed some time, and then started off right before August, kind of right around major league, but it's just major league average, and it's just a straight line up since then. So, and it's all, not all power, but the majority of it that's throwing it up there is the power. Contact is moving itself up a little bit. His decision making is still a little bit below average, but power drives this. If you can hit the ball hard enough, you can make up for the decision value. Because
Yeah. I mentioned the Kansas City Boston series earlier. Boston would have swept that series if not for MJ Melendez. He had an at bat in that game where it was 0-2, and then he drew it out to an 11 pitch walk that started a rally that inning. And he's had at bats like that for 3 or 4 weeks now.
Yep. All right, so good names out there. Of course, Melendez still may have catcher eligibility in the right formats, so keep an eye on that as well. All right, let's get some speed options on the books here, Kevin. Stolen bases, runs scored. Who's still out there that can add to those categories?
Yeah, this guy. So there's probably some better options that we've brought up recently. Whit Merrifield still has some availability. He hasn't run in a few games, but he did steal a base in each of his first 2 games with Atlanta. He's hitting about 260, so he's not the 300 hitter he used to be, but we can handle 260 if we are going to get a stolen base or 2 each week. We are not going to get a 260 batting average out of Otto Lopez, but he's widely available. Horrible batting average. I think he's hitting 207 on the season and even worse recently. And he doesn't have any power. He's got 3 home runs this season. But 5 of his 11 stolen bases that he had this year have come since the break, and 3 of them in the last 6 games. And I feel like this is what we see from teams like Miami at this time of year. The guys that do have speed, if they get on base, they let them go. They're not going anywhere. They know it. They let their guys play. And so if they're going to turn Otto Lopez loose, he just needs to get on base. If he can get on base anywhere close to 30% of the time, in spite of that barely over 200 batting average, then I feel like we will continue to see stolen bases from Otto Lopez.
Yeah, good call out there. Just like one of those ones. I love seeing the ones that are 0% rostered, because like you may not even show up when you're doing a search, or at least scrolling, because you're not going to usually scroll that far down. I'll throw out Dave. I'll just shout out again David Hamilton. If he's actually going to continue to get added playing time, he will.
Because he might have been dropped in some spots.
Yeah, he's still readily rostered in main event, 98%. So there's still going to be 1 or 2 leagues out there where he is available, but down to 73% in those 12-teamer online championships. So good chance, or at least a 25% chance he's available in yours at that level. Sure. Let's move into somebody else that might have a good opportunity ahead, whether it be because of injury or just, getting called up or what have you. But other things to consider, obviously, of course, is the schedule for the next week. We've got 6 teams with a 7-game work week, including my Boston Red Sox, the Minnesota Twins, Texas Rangers, Atlanta, Milwaukee, and the Dodgers all play 7 games. Oakland and Miami play just the 5, so they've got the 2 off days. But in Oakland, with the weird off day on Friday, along with their Bay counterpart of the Giants off on Friday as well. But San Francisco still has the 6 games, but it's unfortunate that they have the split on Friday, so they don't have a very long weekend of games. Colorado is away for the start against Arizona for 3, and then they come back home to face the Padres for 3 as well. Cincinnati is home for 6, all 6, 3 against St. Louis, so they'll be in Great American Small Park along with your Kansas City Royals, spending some time in Cincinnati over the weekend. All right, again, with all that in mind and anything else you want to consider, Kevin, who's got a good looking schedule opportunity ahead of them for this week we should be considering adding?
Yeah, I was surprised that Trevor Larnack had his the availability that he does. He's available in about a third of 15 team leagues and over 90% of 12 teamers he's available. The reason I was so surprised at that, not that he's been an all-star, but they had that 4-game weekend this weekend with their doubleheader here on Friday. So I was surprised to see any Minnesota players at all available. And they have a 7-game week coming up after the 4-game weekend, and 5 versus 7 of those appear to be versus right-handed pitching. Trevor Larnack's hitting in the 2-hole versus righties, and he's versus righties this season, 250 plate appearances. He's hit 249 with all 11 of his home runs versus righties. So Trevor Larnack, I think, is a definite target if you need power this week. Dom Smith hasn't hit a lot of home runs this season for your Red Sox, but hitting 260 with 11 doubles since the All-Star break. So, and 1 home run. Any of those doubles start clearing the fence, and he's readily available. So he's my deeper league play. He's only 14% rostered in the main event and 0% in online championships. Um, I also like Garrett Mitchell because Milwaukee's got 6 out of 7 versus righties this week, and since the break, once again, another one of these guys that's been rolling pretty hot. Only 1 home run, but he's hitting 340 since the break, and a stolen base in there as well. I might have been able to move him down to a different category, but with the opportunity is the 6 out of 7 versus right-handed pitching because he's been going really well.
Yeah, I mean, I will say about Dominic Smith, I had no interest in him being on my Red Sox when it happened. But he has looked like he's actually having fun out there. He looks like a good, player for the clubhouse in general. Even the announcers the other day were talking about, it's going to be really hard when Casas comes back to roster both of these guys, but you almost have to at this point. I'm like, no, that's probably not true. But I appreciate the sentiment there, because I
And
also
he's used to
appreciate.
being sent on his way as
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
right?
It's par for the course at this point in his career. Sorry, Dom. But that is that happened. That's
Yeah,
just
but
nice.
a couple of those doubles start clearing the fence, and he's been on a nice run.
Yeah, I mean, and that's not that change isn't going. They're not going to have to make that decision anytime soon, based on the stories that Tristan Casas is talking about. Even during his rehab stint, just how he's feeling right now, feeling like he's being stabbed in the ribs every time he, swings the bat. So I foresee Dom Smith getting plenty of playing time at least for this week, moving forward. So good call out there. All right, we got some pitchers to talk about. Of course, we've got to worry about that part of our game as well, and we will get to those right after this next break. All right, Kevin. We got our starters that we need to keep streaming. Wins and Ks, our volume stats. We need to keep chipping away at them. They are the usual focus of everybody. And you just cross your fingers on ratios. We'll get to that later. But if we are focusing on just wins and strikeouts, give me your list of guys to waterfall together if they're available.
Yeah, I got a few here this week with a little mixture of availability as usual. Alex Cobb back from injury, making his season debut. 100% rostered in the main event, only 11% in the online championships. One of those big gaps. It always gets my attention. It doesn't always mean I want them in a 12, but it always makes me pay attention and take an extra look and see if I should be interested in a 12. He will get the Chicago Cubs this week. Then at the New York Yankees, which probably not somewhere I'd like to deploy him on my active roster. But then he gets a Kansas City and Pittsburgh two-step. So Chicago Cubs this week, and then a two-step 2 weeks after that. I wouldn't mind sitting him for the Yankees start. Matthew Boyd, 0% rostered, not yet available in NFBC for the Chicago start that he's going to have this week. Those same Cubs, but just looking ahead, we'll have to wait till next week to grab him. It's at the Yankees and versus Texas, but he has been stellar in his minor league starts over the past 3-4 weeks, and he's been throwing, I think, since June 30th, ramping up. So he should be ready to go 5 innings plus when he makes his debut on the season. I would look to stash Matthew Boyd in formats where you are able to grab him now, because I think next weekend he'll be a popular ad. Spencer Arrighetti, only available in shallower leagues, but in about a third of 12 teamers, and he gets the White Sox. That's all I have to say about that. Grant Holmes for Atlanta. He will be at San Francisco. We'll get to see him this weekend, maybe even Friday. I haven't looked at the Atlanta game, but he's only 40% rostered in main events, 3% in online championships, and I like him quite a bit for that start at San Francisco. Paul Blackburn, that the matchups don't get but much better than this. The new New York Met, he's almost universally rostered in 15s, but take a quick look. But there's another one of these big gaps in rostership, only 17% rostered in 12s. He gets Oakland and Miami this week. Oakland has been, they can put up some runs. Lawrence Butler, Brent Rooker are having great seasons, but they're still not a lineup I'm afraid of. So and then these two Arizona guys that are nearly universally rostered in 15s and have some availability in 12s, but both lefties, and they get Colorado on the road. Colorado is horrible. Colorado has been horrible all season, especially on the road and especially versus lefties. And when you combine all of that since the All-Star break, 105 plate appearances as a team, so a decent amount of plate appearances, they're striking out over 48% of the time. Their slashes, I didn't believe this when I looked it up. I reran it to make sure it was right. They're slashing 120, 152, 260 for a 412 OPS versus lefties on the road, a 12 WRC plus, 12, 1, 2.
That doesn't
So
seem good. No.
Erod is 98% rostered in 15s, but only 47% in 12s, and you want him in your 12-team lineup this week. Same with Jordan Montgomery. He's more heavily rostered even in the 12s. He is available in a handful of 15s, so check, and available in nearly 20% of 12s. But if you can get a hold of either one of those guys as lefties with Colorado on the road, those would be my top targets for the week.
That is a great list to consider, and something, I love the fact that I've done everything I could not to just add on to the White Sox shade that has been thrown throughout this episode and throughout the last couple months of our lifetime.
It's
But
hard not to laugh at that Colorado slash line, though.
I mean, geez, Colorado. It's like a hold my beer moment. Like the White Sox are looking so bad, and the Rockies are like, hold my beer, I got this. Yeah, and the A's call out, I think, is great because it goes to this narrative that we always get stuck into, right? Where it's like, A's are bad, they're a bad team. You can stream against them, but they can also light it up sometimes, and you don't learn your lesson until it's too late. Type of situation. So something to keep an eye on. Of course, if you're a PL Pro member, you have access to the PLV team lineup factors page on the projection sheet as well. So always something good to look at on a weekly basis, just to see if there are any trends, if anything's kind of changing as well. So keep an eye on those changes as they are happening, so that you can make adjustments or make good decisions in real time rather than retroactively. And I mean, this isn't somebody that anybody was considering picking up, but it just kind of came across Kevin, and I just want to, vent a little bit. That is unfortunate to hear. Well, we
Yeah, it's sad.
finally got an update on Cade Horton. I'll just say that. Like, I feel like I've been searching for news and radio silence about anything that's happening. Finally got an update. He is done for the rest of the year. So not the update I wanted, but an update nonetheless, because he's had some setbacks with his shoulder injury he's been dealing with the majority of this season. So look for Cade Horton to ramp back up in the offseason, and hopefully we'll see him at least in spring training and make his debut in 2025. He can definitely be one of our sleeper picks for the 2025 draft if he's looking good right out of the gate in spring training. I wouldn't be surprised to see him on the final, one of the final picks of like a DC in October, as well.
Which there's one of those starting soon. Rob DiPietro's Meatball early DC. They're doing that. That's getting going here in a week or two.
Oh, they start in August. I thought it was like September 1st.
They do it in
like,
August.
Of course they do. All right.
We're
Well,
gonna have ADP for 2025 in a couple weeks.
I know. Justin Mason used to do the too early mock drafts. It's like, no. We can just use Rob's ADP from that one draft, and I think that'll be fine. 15 teamer, 50 rounds. You'll get plenty of data. All right. Let's like I alluded to earlier, you sometimes you just cross your fingers and you hope that at this point of the year you can chip away at the ratios, at ERA, at WHIP, or even better case scenario, you hope that everybody else in your league come back down to you, so you don't have to do all the work. But if you got to do some work, Kevin, who might you be throwing your, what basket you throwing your eggs in here to help you out with that case?
Yeah, adding to our list that we just keep accumulating all season long for this category, Cole Sands this week. He's actually rostered in 5% of main events. Prior to giving up a 2-run home run to Ian Happ earlier this week, he had made 15 straight scoreless appearances, and many of them are more than 3 outs. He's been getting 3 to 4 innings per week in a couple of outings. He's a 1.2 and a 1.1. He doesn't just throw one inning at a time. A 23.9 K minus BB percentage on the season. That's elite. Leading to the 3.27 ERA. Not quite as low as we would like to see from a reliever that we're hoping helps bring our ratios down. But the 0.94 WHIP is amazing. So I would add Cole Sands to my list of relievers that I would use this week. And you brought up Tanner Scott earlier in the show on my main event, just as an example of why we like this category. I did not want to throw Nathan Eovaldi at the Yankees this weekend. Still don't know if that's the right decision or not. The pitcher I had available on my roster to put in that spot, goodness.
I hope it wasn't Tanner Scott.
I just forgot who it was. No, it's the other Padre they just added from Tampa. Why can't I remember his name?
Jason Adams.
Jason Adams got me a win yesterday, right? So that's why we talk about this. It's not just the ratios, and Sands does have a couple of wins and a couple of saves on the season to go with those strikeouts, as he's given us the great ratio. So that's why we like this category, and I'm adding Cole Sands to my list this week.
Yeah, keeping an eye on those playoff teams that are kind of running away with their division or with their playoff spots as well. We talked about Baltimore, and God forbid any kind of detriment happens to their lead on or in what they have going on in the AL East. But if they're sitting a little bit prettier at a certain point in September, or even late August, or any other team that's kind of in the same boat, they're going to want to keep their core starters healthier, whether or not they have to make them go less innings in their starts, skip a start here or there. There's going to be more opportunity for bullpen pieces to, be in the right spot at the right time to vulture those things. You very well may see extra innings from bullpen pieces throughout the rest of the year. And so, as we always say, look for the guys that didn't start on Saturday and Sunday for more opportunity, but you might see more opportunity regardless. Even if it's just like an out I mean, even if it's just like an extra out to end the 7th inning or something like that, it's still an extra inning. It's still an extra out. It's still chipping and chipping and chipping away at those ratios due to that volume. All right. Saves. We talked a lot about obviously the San Francisco situation. And that just goes to show that, even after the deadline, things can happen where a team can make maybe a surprising move, opening up a situation here. And you want to be ready. Ryan Walker was rostered in a bunch of places already. So he very well might not be available in your league. I know, unfortunately, I'm pretty sure I had him for a couple weeks in one league, and I dropped him a couple weeks ago. And so I'll have to rebid on him. But there's going to be situations that happen from here on out. Is there a situation that you might be eyeballing if you have a little bit more flexibility on stashing one of those guys?
Ryan Walker's number one for me. I I feel like he will do it. I know Jordan Hicks has experience in the role, and he's back in the bullpen and performing well again, but Ryan Walker's been so good, and he is only 9% rostered in main events. So, he's somebody I like a lot. Um, I will tell you, if you were hoping that if you picked Urseg up when he was still in Oakland, and then when he went to Kansas City, thought he might get the job, I I did. I picked him up in a spot or 2 and was holding him as a spec. It really does not look like they're gonna save him for the 9th inning. They've been using him earlier in games. It appears they want it to be Hunter Harvey. So Hunter Harvey is the spec in Kansas City. I believe James MacArthur's still there as well, but he's had multiple rough outings. So it really looks like they want it to be Hunter Harvey in Kansas City.
Yeah, fair enough. If there's anything that's going to happen anywhere, I would see it happening in like Tampa Bay, Pete Fairbanks, either going down with an injury, knock on wood. I don't want it to happen. But then that situation becomes even cloudier, of course, than San Francisco. And then it's pretty obvious that Chad Green does, indeed have that role. And then the last time Chad Green had that role in Toronto, they had no opportunities, and now he's getting basically back-to-back saves. It's just like, what the heck?
Yes.
Oh man. And then poor John Brebbia, who like just can't. I mean, whatever. I'm sorry. Again, more poor White Sox. I just feel bad for all those. Like when Grady Sizemore was announced as the interim manager, I was like, oh,
I didn't know whether to be
Grady
happy for him or
Sizemore.
sad.
Exactly. Yeah, it makes you happy for Eloy and you're upset for Luis Robert. It's just like, oh man. All right. Well, we'll see what continues to happen there. It's pretty obvious Ben Joyce was going to be moved into the role in Anaheim. Mason Miller is back for Oakland, so he's already taken that job back. No surprise there. Got to save the other day. So if you were holding on to Tyler Ferguson, easy drop at this point. God forbid anything else happens. But that injury for Miller was not pitching related at all. He happened to just jam his finger on a bench or on a bench in the clubhouse while getting some treatment done. So all those situations there are situations that can change, but and I mean, I guess it would be everybody already is aware of this, but Calvin Falker seems to be the man in Miami for whatever saves are going to be available for the Marlins moving forward. So if he still hasn't been picked up there, make sure you're looking for that as well. So Kevin, with all the other relievers kind of out of the way, we got our wild card section. It's my favorite spot. I'm always curious to know what direction you go with it, especially in mid-August or early mid-August. It gets a little bit more interesting. So what wild card is out there that doesn't fit into any of the categories we just finished talking about?
Yeah, I'm gonna continue because I've been bringing him up. I think I brought him up last week, and it might have been 3 or 4 weeks prior to that, but it's really starting to look like we're gonna get about 5 or 6 starts out of Jacob deGrom, and he's 21% rostered. And the Rangers are telling us now I think they need to stay close. They need to have a chance to contend, or they might just say forget it, and we'll see him one start at the end of the season, and then go on, let him start his off season training program. But if Texas could just stay semi close, and they are, because Houston's not running away with it. It's like, I don't think anybody wants to win the AL West is the way it looks. But if we're gonna get 5 or 6 starts out of Jacob DeGrom, he's only 21% rostered in the main event. Uh, so I think he is the one big stash right now. It's even if we end up not seeing him at all, as good as he can be for those 5 or 6 starts, when we're only looking at a max of probably 8 or 9 from anybody the rest of the season, that's worth a stash spot for me.
I have been stashing Jake DeGrom in my PL staff league on the IL all season, only hoping
I
he'll
think in my
be active
TGFBI team, I've had him all year too.
just so I could activate him in the playoffs. And then I had to think to myself, well, first I need to make the playoffs, I guess. But as long as I
Yeah.
make the playoffs, that'll be the best stream that I could think of. So I might as well just get ahead of it. It's put me in a jam most of the season though, because there's very limited IL spots in that league, and I've been over the limit most of the season. But I'm still in top 4, top 3 in that league, so I'm feeling pretty good about my chances. All right. Well, that will do it for recommendations. Keep an eye on your free agent wire to see who is available. As we always say, it doesn't take very long to check. And with all the tools that most of the platforms have nowadays, where you can check cross league availability, you really don't have an excuse to, if you're just looking up a random player in any league to see where where they might be available in your other ones as well. Kevin, close us out here with any final thoughts for the last couple weeks of the season.
Yeah, first, I want to thank Uncle Ted for hanging out with us in the chat again this week. Joey Bart is right. That's a good name. He's going well with Pittsburgh. Take a look at him if you need a catch or two. And you alluded to this earlier in the episode, Adam, and we talk about this from time to time. Don't get caught up just assuming that trends that we've seen in the past are continuing. Cleveland is a horrible offense right now. You look at their overall numbers, they're still great. And there's that narrative. They were so good for the first 3.5 months of the season. Over the last month, they're like 28th or 29th offense in baseball. So just try to keep up, refresh your things, do searches for and I'm not talking about every little hot streak or slump for individual hitters, but as teams, when you're looking at whole teams, like even just versus lefties on the road that I brought up with Colorado earlier, that's over 100 plate appearances. I'll take something from that. So try to take a look at team wise, who's going well, who's going bad. You know Cleveland's a perfect example. I think most people would tell you that Cleveland's got a really good offense. They haven't had a good offense for a long time now.
I mean, a lot of that narrative comes along with just how their home ballpark had been playing, which was
Yep.
kind of a surprise, or more of a neutral ballpark, and it was playing so hitter friendly for most of the year. That has something to do with how well they were performing, obviously at home as well. But so that kind of feeds into that narrative as well. So, yeah, keep an eye on things that are changing. I had a conversation with somebody else the other day about, would be really cool to have team rolling charts rather than just player rolling charts. Hint, hint, wink, wink.
Oh,
Just
yeah.
a little preview.
We know some
Something
guys that might be able to.
That might be coming.
We know some guys.
Yeah. I know a guy. I know, or a few actually. One main guy, but
And your Red Sox are an example. A month ago, we weren't talking about them as one of the best offenses in baseball. They weren't horrible, but over the last month, they may have been the best offense in baseball.
And that goes to the other way. It's like you never really want to throw a streamer in Fenway, even if the Sox aren't on a heater, because Fenway just plays that way.
You definitely don't want to now.
But now it's over the top. Exactly.
Yes. I'd throw in Colorado before Fenway right now.
There it is.
I would easy.
We will end with another jab at the Rockies. And close it out there. That is going to wrap it up for episode 176 of On the Wire. You can follow myself on the Twitter at @AdaGrade. That's all spelled out. Kevin is at Hastings Kevin. Of course, follow the pod itself on the Twitter at On the Wire Pod. But more importantly, follow us on the tube of views, the YouTube at On the Wire Pod, and that's where we'll be streaming all these shows with this nice fancy background. If you're listening to us and you made it through the entire episode before the end credits roll up, I appreciate that. And then shout out to just check out the Twitter feed and see what we have going on there in case you ever want to watch or listen after the fact. We'll have all of our streams recorded and put on there as well. So after all that, I am Adam Howe on behalf of Kevin Hastings. Thanks for listening, and we bid you goodbye.